Have you ever felt an invisible thread, a silent symphony resonating within your soul, hinting at a connection that transcends the boundaries of time and space? The stark, unforgiving light of St. Mary's Hospital seemed to magnify the weariness etched on David Carter's face. He held his 3-year-old son, Mason, a vibrant splash of Superman blue against the sterile backdrop of humming machines and hushed whispers. David, only 36, felt the weight of the world pressing down, each sleepless night adding another layer to the burden he carried alone. Mason, despite the fragile 4 lines snaking beneath his pajamas, radiated an innocent curiosity that both warmed and pierced David's heart. "Daddy, will the DRS make me all better?" His small voice echoed in the long corridor, a delicate melody against the symphony of the sick. David tightened his grip, careful not to disturb the delicate threads of life sustaining his son. "Yes, buddy. They are the best DRS, and they will take very good care of you." For 6 months, David had been fighting a solitary battle he never imagined, a silent war against a foe unseen, unheard, yet devastatingly real. Mason had been diagnosed with a rare blood disorder, a cruel twist of fate that demanded specialized treatment and relentless hospital visits. David, a construction worker by trade, possessed a strong back and an even stronger will, but his insurance only stretched so far. The medical bills piled up like storm clouds, threatening to engulf him financially. He had taken unpaid leave, a sacrifice that drained their meager savings account weeks ago. Tonight, a desperate urgency propelled them through the hospital doors. Mason's fever had spiked to a dangerous height, a fiery threat that brooked no delay. As they walked deeper into the labyrinthine corridors, David wrestled with the gnawing fear that relentlessly clawed at his insides. What if he could not afford the treatments Mason desperately needed? What if he failed as a father, unable to provide the very thing his son needed most? They passed the administrative wing, a world separated by glass and privilege. Through the transparent barrier, David glimpsed well-dressed figures engaged in an evening meeting. Board members, he assumed, their discussions revolving around budgets and policies, detached from the realities of families like his, navigating the bewildering complexities of medical care with dwindling resources and mounting anxieties. Suddenly, Mason stiffened in David's arms, his small hand pointing towards the brightly lit room. "Daddy, look." David followed his son's gaze, his heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and hope. What had captured the child's attention? "That's Mommy," Mason declared, his voice filled with absolute certainty. His small finger remained fixed, unwavering, pointing directly at a woman standing at the head of the conference table, her presence radiating authority and competence. David's heart lurched, a sudden, jarring halt in its rhythmic beat. The woman was undeniably striking, exuding an air of polished success. She was in her early 30s, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek, professional style. Her clothes spoke of wealth and discerning taste, her posture conveying an unmistakable aura of power. "Mason, sweetie, that is not Mommy," David said gently, his voice betraying a tremor he could not quite suppress. Mason's mother had abandoned them when he was barely a year old, unable or unwilling to embrace the demanding realities of motherhood, choosing instead to pursue her career ambitions. David had not heard from her since that day, but Mason shook his head, his small face etched with unwavering conviction, the kind only a child can possess, a knowing that adults often lose in the tangled web of their experiences. "Yes, it is, Daddy. I remember her smell. I remember her voice." In that very moment, an almost ethereal connection seemed to form. The woman in the conference room looked up, her eyes locking with David's through the transparent barrier. For a fleeting second, her carefully constructed composure faltered, a crack appearing in her polished facade. David saw a flicker of something profound cross her face, recognition, shock, and something else, something akin to pain. The woman excused herself from the meeting, her movements betraying a sudden urgency. She walked towards the door, her steps measured yet purposeful. As she drew closer, David felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. Mason was right. Despite the expensive clothes, the polished appearance, this was indeed Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had given birth to Mason and then vanished from their lives, leaving behind a void that time had failed to fill. David, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible as she stepped into the hallway. Sarah, David replied, his own voice strained, choked with emotions he thought he had long buried, sealed away in the deepest recesses of his heart. Mason, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension swirling around him, reached out his small arms towards Sarah, his face illuminated with unadulterated joy. Mommy, I knew it was you. Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring her vision as she gazed upon the little boy she had not seen in over 2 years. Mason, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, breaking with a mixture of regret and longing. David stood frozen, holding Mason between them, caught in the cross-currents of a past he thought he had escaped and a future he could not yet envision. The woman before him was a stark contrast to the struggling young mother he remembered. She was undeniably successful now, radiating an aura of wealth and influence, a far cry from the woman who had walked away. What are you doing here? Sarah asked, though even as the words left her lips, she seemed to realize the answer. Her eyes scanned Mason's hospital bracelet, taking in the 4-line, and her face paled, the blood draining from her cheeks. Mason is sick, David said simply, his voice steady despite the surreal nature of the encounter. He has been in and out of hospitals for months. Tonight, his fever spiked too high, and I had to bring him to the emergency room. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, a gesture of shock and disbelief. What's wrong with him? A blood disorder, David explained, his voice unwavering, despite the turmoil raging within him. The DRS say it's treatable, but it requires ongoing care and medication, treatments that cost more than I can afford. Sarah's gaze was fixed on Mason, who continued to reach for her, his eyes filled with unwavering trust and love, as if she had never abandoned him. Can I hold him? She asked hesitantly, her voice barely a whisper. David hesitated for only a moment, his mind wrestling with conflicting emotions. Then, carefully, he transferred Mason to Sarah's arms. The little boy immediately snuggled against her, burying his face in her shoulder, as if some deep, primal part of him remembered the safety and comfort of his mother's embrace. I missed you, Mommy, Mason said simply, his small hand patting Sarah's cheek with a gentle, innocent touch. Sarah closed her eyes, holding Mason close, her body trembling as tears streamed down her face, unchecked and unashamed. I missed you too, baby, more than you will ever know. David watched this unexpected reunion with a maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. Part of him was consumed by anger, resentment simmering just beneath the surface. He resented Sarah for leaving them, for abandoning them when they needed her most. But another part of him, the part that saw the unadulterated joy on Mason's face, the undeniable need he had for his mother, felt something akin to relief. Sarah, David said quietly, breaking the silence that had enveloped them. What happened to you? Where have you been all this time? Sarah opened her eyes, her gaze meeting David's over Mason's head. After I left, I threw myself into my work. I started a medical consulting company, and it grew faster than I ever imagined. I became successful, wealthy even, but I convinced myself that you and Mason were better off without me. She paused, stroking Mason's hair gently, her touch filled with a tenderness that had been absent for far too long. I told myself that I was too selfish, too career-focused to be a good mother. I thought if I stayed away, you could find someone better for Mason, someone who could give him the stability and love he deserved. But you never tried to contact us, David said, trying to keep the hurt and bitterness from seeping into his voice. I was afraid, Sarah admitted, her voice laced with vulnerability. Afraid that you would reject me. Afraid that Mason wouldn't remember me. Afraid that I would hurt both of you again. Mason looked up at Sarah, his brow furrowed with seriousness. Are you going to stay this time, Mommy? The question hung in the air like a fragile ornament, poised to shatter with the slightest touch. It was a simple question, yet it carried the weight of years of absence, the longing of a child's heart. Sarah looked from Mason to David, then back to her son, her eyes searching for answers, for forgiveness, for a second chance. If your daddy will let me, she said quietly, her voice filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. I'd like to try. I want to help take care of you and make sure you get all the medicine you need to feel better. David studied Sarah's face, searching for any hint of insincerity, Any sign that this was just another fleeting decision she would abandon when faced with the inevitable challenges. But what he saw was genuine remorse, a raw honesty that had been absent 3 years ago. He saw a flicker of the woman he had once loved, the woman he believed had been lost forever. "Mason needs his mother," David said finally, his voice filled with a quiet resolve. "And frankly, I need help. I cannot do this alone anymore." Over the following weeks, Sarah slowly, cautiously, re-entered their lives, her presence a tentative sunrise after a long, dark night, a healing balm to old wounds. She used her wealth and connections to ensure Mason received the best possible care, consulting with top specialists from across the country, leaving no stone unturned in her quest to heal her son. She also leveraged her influence as a major hospital benefactor to help other families facing similar medical crises, providing them with financial assistance and emotional support, easing their burdens in ways she wished someone had done for her. But more importantly, she began the arduous, yet deeply rewarding, process of rebuilding her relationship with Mason, slowly earning his trust and affection, brick by brick. She attended every DR's appointment, her presence a reassuring constant in the sterile environment of the hospital. She learned to administer Mason's medications, her touch gentle and precise. She spent hours reading to him, her voice a soothing balm against the anxieties of his illness, and she played his favorite games, immersing herself in his world, rediscovering the simple joys of childhood. 3 months later, Mason's condition had stabilized significantly, a testament to the unwavering dedication of his medical team and the unwavering love and support of his parents. He was still undergoing treatment, but the light had returned to his eyes, and the laughter had returned to his voice. One afternoon, as they sat in Mason's hospital room, reading stories together as he received his weekly treatment, a quiet moment of contentment settled over them. The beeping machines seemed less intrusive, the sterile environment less oppressive. "Daddy," Mason said, looking up from his book, his brow furrowed in thought. "Are we a family again?" David and Sarah exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them, a recognition of the long and arduous journey they had undertaken, the uncertain road that still lay ahead. They had been having careful conversations about the future, taking things slowly, cautiously, focusing primarily on Mason's needs, allowing their hearts to guide them, one step at a time. "We're working on it, buddy," David said gently, ruffling Mason's hair. "What do you think about that?" Mason smiled, that bright, innocent smile that had carried them all through the darkest of days, a beacon of hope in the face of despair. "I think families help each other when someone is sick, and families stay together." Sarah reached over and took David's hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "Mason is very wise for a 3-year-old. David squeezed her hand gently, his heart overflowing with a gratitude he could not fully express. "Yes, he is. He knew who you were, even when I didn't believe him." "Children see with their hearts," Sarah said softly, her voice filled with a newfound understanding. "Maybe we should all try to do that more often." 6 months later, Mason was declared to be in full remission, the culmination of countless prayers, unwavering dedication, and the miracle of modern medicine. The rare blood disorder that had threatened to steal his life had been vanquished, replaced by a vibrant energy and an unquenchable zest for life. Sarah had established a foundation to help other families facing similar medical crises, providing them with financial assistance, emotional support, and access to the best medical care available. She had learned to balance her successful career with her newfound role as a mother, prioritizing her family above all else. David had returned to work, his burdens eased by Sarah's presence and support. He now had the security of knowing that Mason would always have the care he needed, the love he deserved. More importantly, he had learned a valuable lesson, a profound truth about the complexities of human relationships. Sometimes people leave not because they don't love you, but because they don't yet know how to love themselves. As they walked out of the hospital together after Mason's final treatment, the little boy looked up at both his parents, his eyes sparkling with joy and gratitude. "I told you that was Mommy. I never forgot her." Sarah knelt down and hugged Mason tightly, burying her face in his hair. "And I never forgot you, sweetheart. Not for a single day." Sometimes, David reflected, the most important reunions happen in the most unexpected places, in the sterile corridors of a hospital, amidst the beeping machines and the hushed anxieties. And sometimes, it takes a child's unwavering faith, a pure and innocent heart, to remind adults that love, real love, never truly disappears. It may be hidden, buried beneath layers of fear and regret, but it waits patiently, persistently, for the right moment to find its way home. It waits for the whisper of a familiar scent, the echo of a beloved voice, the unwavering belief of a child who knows, deep in his heart, that families belong together. It just waits patiently for the right moment to find its way home.